Okay, let's move on. Let's talk about Game Chat. I mean, going back to the original Direct that introduced the system proper, Game Chat was a properly showcased feature that they wanted to tell us about. And we got together to have a session of Game Chat the other day, and I think ultimately we came away quite impressed with it. We'll talk about performance implications a bit later. But Oliver, this is pretty awesome, right?
Yeah, Game Chat really surprised me. Really surprised me. So it's basically like a Discord call-like interface where you can have a voice and potentially a video chat session with game streaming, with a face overlaid or a whole body overlaid over your video feed with up to 4 people, up to 3 other people essentially here. And it's integrated at the OS level. You even have a button for it on the controller, the C button right here that was so mysterious before Nintendo announced what its purpose was. And it's a really well integrated, really thoughtful system for having basically a voice comm system with your friends. So here, the thing that really impressed me most, and that was really evident in our testing that we did with John, was the quality of the audio. On most other systems, to have a good quality audio feed, you need a good quality headset. You need to make sure it has low noise. You need to do all these different things for it. You need to make sure that people aren't like blasting audio over their televisions. That can be super annoying. I know on the PlayStation side of things, when people have the, when they're using the mic on their controller and you're hearing the clickety clacks, you're hearing the noise from the television. It's horrible. It's horrific. But here, we are getting such a good result. John was playing a game, right? Super loud game. On a different system with lots of music, lots of audio blaring, and he was having to yell to even hear himself over that din.
Right.
And he was talking just to the microphone in the console from, I presume, several feet away, right?
Yeah.
And we're hearing his voice perfectly clearly, and that was so remarkable.
It was like 8 or 9 feet away, and the Switch was directly located next to one of the speakers that I had absolutely cranked up. Actually, in between the left and center channel, sitting right there. And like you said, I had to yell to make myself heard. I had the volume up specifically for testing, and you couldn't hear it at all. But my voice was coming through clear. Like, what the heck?
No, not at all. The only thing we did hear was, because the system is tuned to distinguish human voices from the music, is when the game he was playing, when someone was speaking in that game, we could hear the person speaking in the game, but none of the music, nothing else. Also, John very amusingly pointed the camera towards the screen, and it masked out the player character in the game as if it was a human.
Yes,
that was also quite
the
amusing.
game I was playing, it masked out the character and sent him over.
Yeah, because basically what it does is it takes your video feed, it uses the machine learning hardware, the tensor cores in the unit itself, at least according to Nintendo and NVIDIA here, and it masks you out from your video feed, right? And it superimposes you potentially, if you choose to enable this feature, over a live stream of your screen, over a screen share essentially of your screen. So people can see what you're doing, they can see your face, you can also change it so it's just a cutout of your face in a circle. And interestingly, if you do that cutout, it will actually track your face in real time.
Yep.
So I could move my face around and it would always find me in the circle with a little bit of lag, and so it would get my face in there. So that was actually a really good feature. That was very, very cool. But I think that Nintendo was late to voice chat on consoles, like by some margin. Obviously, we've had voice chat on other consoles for like 20 years. In the past, on Switch 1, they had like a voice chat app you could use on your phone, but that was super inconvenient. But here I feel like they're late to the party, but they've executed with capabilities that are well and beyond any other console platform, that are, comparable to a good experience on a PC with a fast processor that can do a lot of this stuff in real time for you. I found the streaming functionality here to other players to be pretty neat. The AI background removal worked fantastically, like I said. The face tracking, again, worked amazingly well. The voice isolation was like almost better than anything else I've ever seen in a real-time application. It was super, super impressive. It's a really well thought out package that's beautifully executed, wrapped up in a pretty good interface. The only possible caveat here from my perspective, I mean, there are a couple caveats, but the biggest caveat from my perspective is that you do need to have friend codes, right? It's a friend code based system. It is still a little bit annoying interfacing with other players. There are some limitations in the streaming system. So for instance, I can't stream my face feed if I have a full screen view of the game open. I need to have a view of the game open with at least some of the people beneath it. Basically, you need to have that split view open, presumably for like safety reasons. You wouldn't want people to forget they're streaming to other players. That seems like a sensible compromise. And there are a couple other things with like video quality and things like that we can discuss. But in general, it was super impressive system. I've also used it with my friends separate from this recording engagement a few days ago. And it's just been really impressive the entire time. I've never heard anyone's game audio or anything like that. It's just a super impressive system.
So yeah, same for me. I use it with some other friends as well. And I use it on my second setup over here with that second dock. I actually shoved the Switch 2 behind my PC, which was processing a video, by the way. So the fans are going, it was noisy, and it was hidden back behind a ledge, and it still worked perfectly somehow, which is just... I'm really impressed. It made me wonder if they're leveraging any of the work that NVIDIA did for like its like broadcast suite of AI tools, you know, for isolating voice and noise canceling. So they already have the hardware there. It would make sense to actually do something with that because it's super effective, as you say.
Mm-hmm. Actually seemed to be better than the RTX broadcast stuff.
Agreed, yeah.
Oddly enough. I've got some notes here. Let's talk about the performance of Game Chat, right? Because let's just take a look at my captured session. I was basically running Cyberpunk benchmarks while everybody was engaged with Game Chat. You can see that the game frame rate is the game frame rate, but you can also see down at the bottom that the feeds are basically 10 frames per second that you get in, including your own. That was quite interesting. Also interesting is that those feeds independently update, that arbitrarily independently updating per screen. And on top of that, the overlays of the people are also operating independently of the gameplay feed as well, which is quite interesting, just sort of from a sort of academic perspective in terms of the nuts and bolts of it.
Very Sega Saturn, if you will.
Yes, VDP 1 and 2. Yeah, absolutely. Here's the thing, right? Going into this, obviously we had access to some developer documentation, which was saying that Game Chat does have a system overhead. And I don't think that's particularly surprising now based on the quality of it and what it's doing. It's probably a hit worth taking, but there is a hit there which may or may not manifest, I think it's fair to say, depending on how much of the system resources the game is using. So while we did this test, I basically ran those canned Cyberpunk benchmarks where already there are performance drops without Game Chat. And it was quite interesting to see what happened. So the Kabuki streaming benchmark that we used here, I actually tested this at 40 FPS performance modes to get as much stress on the system as possible. At the beginning, I actually found that the Game Chat performance was higher, which is unexpected, but it comes at the cost of streaming issues where assets are actually streaming in much later than they were without Game Chat active. So yeah, that's kind of interesting. It took around 15, 20 seconds or so for the streaming issue on the Game Chat side to resolve itself. Could it have been a one-off? Well, I actually tested that twice and had the same issue. So I do think it is Game Chat, obviously, having an issue there. It's not going to affect gameplay. And if you actually look there, Cyberpunk was actually being played by Tom, and everything kind of seemed to okay there. Otherwise, the benchmark proceeded pretty much like for like, run-to-run variances, but within expectations, until the end, where we got into a really dense area of the Kabuki area of the map, and then we started to see some performance drops there on the Game Chat side. I also had another benchmark from within Cyberpunk, which we can run. It's kind of like a mission race scene, mostly like for like, not too many issues there. There was a section further on in the benchmark where you could actually see that the non-Game Chat run is significantly faster. I also tried what I consider to be a completely GPU-limited run scene from the Phantom Liberty black market. Both versions ran essentially identically. So it seems to be the case that if a system is under load, possibly on the CPU side, oddly enough, then you may encounter some performance drops using Game Chat. But ultimately, the feature set that it's provided, I think it's probably worth it. It's pretty impressive stuff overall. Okay, so another system feature that we really wanted to test out. And John, Game Share. This is an interesting concept, right? Switch 2 gaming on Switch 1 consoles. Tell us more.
Yeah, so this kind of is an idea that goes a little bit back to some of the DS days, I guess, where Nintendo allowed you to sort of do a download play thing where if you had one copy of a game, you could have your friend nearby with another DS and then download sort of like a copy of it to that system, and you could play multiplayer. Games today are too big for that, obviously, so that's not going to work. So what they've instead done is implemented GameShare, which, of course, is a video streaming solution. They even cited the Wii U experience as sort of like, I guess, a test or like the inspiration for this, perhaps, and maybe even technologically it's related. But in terms of the actual results, I would say it is nowhere near the quality of what the Wii U delivered. Essentially, so in my experience, image quality just takes a gigantic hit. Things do not look good with GameShare in my experience. Now, the problem is that the one GameShare game I've tested is Fast Fusion, which is a very, very fast game, as the name implies, and that already has some image quality issues. So I feel like it's maybe a worst case scenario for it in terms of image quality, but you're really left with something that just looks like you're watching a YouTube video that has only processed a 360p, and it's just full of artifacts and noise, and it looks bad. But on the flip side, it was largely smooth, which I guess is key. Not perfect, but in general, it actually kind of held a smooth 60 frames per second update. So it actually moved better than I expected. So they seem to have sacrificed image quality for fluidity, which is maybe not the worst choice. But in addition, there is also the input lag. And based on the variability of the connection, it can also cause the input lag to spike and get worse. And there's also occasional momentary freezes, various things like that. So in a pinch, it works. But so far, in this case, I would say it's not really a fun or optimal way to play anything for the second player. Like, it feels decidedly unfair, where the main player doing the sharing gets the native experience, and then the other person gets that, basically, which is not great. But yeah, so I just want to see it used in other games and see if it's actually more usable for slower games, and if that has any impact on overall image quality. I assume it actually might. But I'm a little disappointed, considering how well Nintendo did this video streaming stuff with the Wii U, that they wouldn't. I feel like if they had taken this a little more seriously, they could have implemented something that was perhaps a bit more potent, and that's not what we got.
Okay, I expected more from the video encoder, to be honest. I did some Cyberpunk clips last night for a project I'm working on, and it's like 10 megabit, 1080p, 30 AVC. And it's kind of like strobing artifacts in it. It's really not good. The sort of in-console video captures and rarely, that impressive. But, they've got an NVIDIA encoder in this one, which does fantastic things on PC, and surely it can do better. Surely it can do better. I don't know.